Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where I have decided to go with the nuclear option. So this is what we've got right now. This is pretty much the version that we had before. If I can look at other things, that would be nice, KSP2. We can't zoom out any further than this, apparently. So that is, useful. But this is pretty much the same design as we had before, but I added on this extra set of engines. This is the XL fuel tank with some adapters, as well as a heat shield to protect this guy, and 4 vectors. Now, these are on multi-engine modules, and this is not actually going to work because the multi-engine modules appear to overheat very early on. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to detach the multi-engine module. We're just going to have the raw fuel tank here, which, from what I can tell, appears to actually be slightly better in terms of its heat capacity. We'll see how true that is, but I want to start the burn on this basically the moment we hit atmosphere, no matter what. So we're going to attach those guys there like so. Okay, and it should have mirrored out to the other side. Yes, it did. Oh, now we're able to zoom out further. I see how it is. Okay. Weird. It seems to truncate us there when we are... when the camera is inside of this gantry, but then it allows us to clip through it. Okay, whatever, KSP2. If that's the way you want to be, that's fine. So this I've already tested, and this has like 3,300 meters per second in it. One thing I want to check is what would the thrust to weight to this be on the surface of Eve? So the thrust to weight is only 0.2 on the surface of Eve. That's understood. We're going to want to use this mostly as a deceleration stage. So, wait, no, that's in vacuum. What would the atmospheric be? 0.1? Yeah, so that's not going to achieve any sort of takeoff, of course. But it would be at 0.2. It would help us slow down, for sure. It's like 3,000 meters per second, like I said. So let's put this out on the pad. And I want to dive down... not tremendously deep into the atmosphere here because of that heating issue. I'm not sure how the fuel tank is going to do here. I know the multi-engine mount didn't do very well. There was no overheat on the engines, but in the last attempt, I burned about 500 meters per second out of that tank, and we need to pause this quick. In the last attempt, I burned about 500 meters per second out of these tanks here. There was lots left, but then the engine mount burned off, and of course that lost us our engines. So that is what we are working on addressing here. If we have to, we might be able to work out some sort of a strange heat shield setup here, where we have like a heat shield here, and then these are mounted like elsewhere. I'm not sure exactly where they go. Maybe directly on the heat shield, and then we might have to have like fuel lines running. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. So for now, we're going to put ourselves in orbit around Eve, and I want to dip us down to 85 kilometers. I'm also going to change around our current setup here a little bit. Let's go ahead and let this tick, and let's get this all caught up. Eventually, KSP will get there. There we go. Now we're going to extend all of our heat shields. Perfect. And I'm not going to jettison this stage until after these guys start up. Okay, so it's going to be something like that. Perfect. So the next thing that we need to do is get ourselves over to the retrograde marker. And that is, of course, easy enough to do. Now, these are... of course, it's currently not responding. We'll get there. And while it was not responding, you couldn't see my cursor either. Awkward. So that is definitely a thing. So these tanks out here are a lot of mass, and they make it a lot harder for us to spin the craft. I had a hard time accelerating up the spin and decelerating the spin in the previous run. So that was definitely awkward. But we're going to start up the burn of our deceleration stage here, and I'm going to drop us down to just about... actually, I'm going to go to 88 here. I'm going to just... actually, no, I changed my mind. I'm going to go to 90 here. I am just going to kiss the very edge of the atmosphere, because we're going to be doing a significant deceleration burn at that point. So let's bring this straight on down to 90, just at the very edge of the atmosphere. Commencing this burn now. Okay, so we're bringing this down to 90, and then once we get to 90, we're going to warp around to that periapsis, or slightly before it, with the goal being that we are going to get ourselves into a position where we can burn all of this simultaneously. We'll have a little bit of extra thrust to weight, but I just want to drop this down, get to the periapsis, and then start our entry at that point. That's the idea here. We're going to start our burn significantly higher than I did last time. Last time I started the burn when I saw the multi-engine mount have an overheat gauge. So that was clearly too late to start that burn. No doubt about that. Well, let's just drop this to 90, and this should, in theory, be a successful attempt, because there's so much delta V in these vectors that are out to the side here that we have enough to wipe out this velocity on its own, in theory. Thrust to weight is a whole nother thing. We're going to have to rely on drag at a certain point. But even so, this should be successful, assuming that we don't have this fuel tank burn off. That's the danger here. And we'll see if that happens. So, we're currently at 97 kilometers on our periapsis. Now 96. And yeah, you can see that this thrust to weight is not phenomenal. This engine barely has, with the added mass out over here, it's a lot of mass, it barely has the capacity to deorbit us now. But we do have the ability to deorbit, plus a little bit extra. So that is fantastic. We're going to take this down to 90, which is where the atmosphere starts. So, 92. It's very, very slow in comparison. This isn't surprising. 91. And... good enough. That's just barely in the atmosphere by 18 meters. I like it. So, now what we need to do is... wow, this frame rate, though. Okay, that's very exciting. This frame rate is very bad. Okay, the game might need a restart. We'll see. I want to warp to about here. So we're going to warp to there. And the game will get caught up eventually. And as we burn off some of these heat shields and some of the side tanks and things like that, this should get better, in theory. So I wanted to warp to not quite the periapsis here, because I want to give us time to make our way back to retrograde, because we're going to be lighting up all of these engines for the last 3 meters per second we've got here. But we're going to be lighting up all of these engines fairly shortly. Now you can see we're currently tumbling quite a long ways around. I'm going to cancel this time warp. And we are certainly going to want to start turning this guy on around. Eventually, the game will get caught up. One of these days. There we go. Excellent. Okay, so we're starting to turn this. We've got a fair amount of time. We've got about a minute 40 before we make our way into the atmosphere. So that looks good. We're going to turn this, but it's going to be reasonably slow. I want to make sure that we don't get too much of a tumble going on in the roll direction. And to be honest, I don't know why we're yawing over here. I would rather not be yawing at this moment. I would rather just be pitching. That's really the only direction we need to go anyway. It is wanting to pitch us, but at least it's not rolling us, so that's fine, I guess. This frame rate is getting increasingly worse. A game restart may be in order here, but let's just get this guy around to retrograde. Man, this is quite a slideshow. Why is it trying to bring us over to the right? Why is it trying to yaw us right? I don't understand. We just need to be moving on the pitch, which is exactly what we're doing. We're coasting on the pitch directionality right now. I don't understand why it's trying to bring us to the right. It really doesn't need to. In fact, it needs to bring us a little to the left. And we're going to have to roll this way a smidge as well. So let's get that going a bit. That'll be relatively fine for now. Now we probably have too much velocity on the left side, so I'm allowing it to continue to be on the right. But this is quite a thing, no doubt about that. Moving this is complicated. This is an incredibly heavy payload, and getting it here is going to be real interesting. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to do that one yet, but we have a lot of potential lift points here, and we're going to have to use them. I think that's very, very clear. Okay, so we've still got another 500 meters to go here. That looks fine. I'm going to stage, and that's going to activate all of those vector engines. Excellent. And you can see we've got 18 meters per second. It's actually a lot higher than that. That's a fake amount of meters per second. So that is absolutely fine for right now. Let's just position ourselves over here. And then we're going to warp forward until we hit the atmosphere. We've only got about another 400 meters to go there in terms of verticality. So that is absolutely understood. It has taken us a while to get this turned, and that's not necessarily surprising. In reality, I might not even warp it, to be honest. We'll see. But this looks pretty decent as far as our directionality goes. So for the time being, I think I'm going to warp us forward a little bit further. We do have some time to go here. But this is going to cause us to drift. So, let's see what that looks like. I'm going to warp us forward. It's going to take some time to get that going. Eventually that'll start. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, you can see we are definitely changing a bit here, but we're now in atmosphere. And we're just going to bring this right on over. So that's not too much of a change. As soon as the game gets caught up here... Oh, wow, that was a big spike. Okay. As soon as the game gets caught up here, I'm going to start up a burn. And that will help us gimbal our way over. So let's get going on that. And we're just going to gimbal ourselves over to the retrograde marker. And we are just burning retrograde maximally at this point. So we're going to hold retrograde here. We're going to ditch this braking engine as soon as we are done with that. We're overshooting the retrograde marker a bit. That's noted. Gimbaling will help us get that back under control. The back engine is burned out now, so we're going to jettison that. That was very loud. And also, in a moment here, we are going to get caught up. The game is really not liking what we're asking it to do. There's no doubt about that. But okay, there we go. So back up to the retrograde marker we go. And now we're just going to burn here. See how we've got 3,300 meters per second here? It's a lot of meters per second. What it isn't is high thrust to weight. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be high thrust to weight. We're having a bit of an oscillation in the pitch directionality, which is a little awkward. Let's see if we can hold it here. I'm just working on offsetting that a little bit more quickly. There we go. Yeah, something like that. Now we hold it here. Okay. I think that should be that oscillation under control enough. So that looks good. Okay, and now we're going to decelerate here for a good long time. Now, you can see that our apoapsis is in the atmosphere. Our periapsis is quite low, but we're going to be decelerating here for a while. So I'm going to cut out some of this at this point, and we will be back when something interesting occurs. See you guys in just a moment. Okay, so here we are crossing down below 2830 as of right now. Now, I wanted to come back and mention that my best, without this current setup, my best attempt that I did was this morning at 2650 meters per second before losing attitude in the yaw direction. Now, we're going to be going much slower when we hit that thick portion of the atmosphere this time, and that will hopefully do the trick. But I want to be clear, we can't ride these engines all the way down to the ground. We're not going to have the thrust to weight to do that. We can ride them a long ways, certainly, but at some point, we're going to lose efficiency. The question is, what point is that? Well, we're going to start losing vertical speed very, very quickly. Our vertical speed is building up right now. We're getting rid of almost exclusively horizontal speed. But eventually that will transition over into being vertical speed. So for now, this is a fairly efficient thing to do. I already tested, if we cut the engines, we are increasing velocity, which is deeply unsurprising at 83 kilometers. However, this is significantly lower than we were at when the multi-engine mounts began to overheat previously. So that sounds great. Of course, we're also going significantly slower. We're going a lot slower, in fact. We still have, according to this, 3,000 meters per second in this. That's wild. Okay. I mean, we're burning off an awful lot of mass as we do this as well. We need to keep that in mind. These tanks hold a truly insane amount of mass. So that is certainly noted. For now, of course, we are just continuing to decelerate, and I think we'll stick around here until we drop below 2650, which is, of course, our best attempt thus far. So that won't be too much longer. We're almost down below 2750, and you can see here our altitude is still 82 kilometers. Like, the atmosphere is not all that thick at this point. But we have gotten rid of a large amount of our speed. The question is, what speed do we need to be going at? But we can dial that in. I think for this attempt, I'm going to target about 2 kilometers per second. And then from there, trust that our heat shields will slow us down enough. And if we need to burn more, we can do that. We've got a lot of additional fuel in these tanks, in theory. So that should be reasonably fine for now. We're crossing down below 2750 right now, although we do seem to be losing efficiency on this. I'm noticing. This isn't going down quite as quick as it was, and you can see here we're coming off of the horizon, so we're starting to go more down and less sideways. This is ultimately a good thing because we want to have more drag on these heat shields. We're currently reaching 78 kilometers, which is where we would normally see our heat gauges start to pop open. But we're going way, way, way slower than we would be at that altitude normally. We're going about 400 meters per second slower than we would be at this altitude without the braking burn. I guess we could call this a re-entry burn. Something along those lines. So that's looking pretty decent for right now. I'm going to cut the engines here and let's see if we are decelerating. I don't think we will be. I think we'll be accelerating. Cutting engines. Accelerating. Yes, that is expected. Okay. That's just because the air pressure is not high enough for us to be above our terminal velocity at this altitude. So that's absolutely fine and understood. I'm going to continue to burn here for a little while longer, but we're going to need to let this drop fairly soon. Because, yeah, you can definitely see we're getting rid of that horizontal velocity, which is a good thing, ultimately. So I want to get this down to 2650 this way. And then I think we'll let it coast for a while. Or maybe we should just continue to burn until we get down below 2,000. Which that is almost certainly going to require well, it's almost certainly going to utilize some atmospheric drag. I mean, we're utilizing it right now to assist ourselves in slowing down. Now, I think we should keep burning here and just see how it feels. If we're over-burning, then we can adjust that for future runs. But this is, I think, well, this is by far our most successful deceleration thus far. There's no doubt about that. We're currently at 75 kilometers in altitude, but we're traveling under 2,700 meters per second. We still haven't seen a single heat gauge. So I'm wondering if we can get rid of some of these shells and increase our efficiency that way. That might be possible if the issue with our flipping, if that issue is not related to mass distribution. We'll see. That might be a possibility. Also, notice how our electric charge is going up because burning these engines is a source of electricity. So that's a useful thing for this as well. That looks good. So we're currently traveling at 2675. Keep in mind my previous record, 2650. We are definitely going to pass that, but you can see we're losing efficiency in this burn because we are getting pulled down towards Eve, and these engines are not powerful enough to counteract Eve's gravity. They are powerful enough to get rid of our horizontal velocity, but they're not powerful enough to eliminate our vertical velocity. So that means that eventually we're going to see our surface velocity start to increase unless the coefficient of drag starts to counteract that enough, which it probably will here fairly soon. We're at 72 kilometers in altitude at this point, and the drag is starting to get substantial. Okay, let's cross 2650, and then I want to check to see if we are reducing or increasing speed. I expect it to still be an increase in speed. So, 2650. Okay, let's cut throttle. Increasing. Yep, that's what I expected. Okay, so we're resuming the throttle for now. That sounds good. And I'm just going to continue to burn this for a while. As you can see, our velocity here and our amount of delta V is getting closer together, which is expected because we don't have the thrust to weight, as I said, to counteract Eve's gravity. So we're losing efficiency on this, and that means that eventually our delta V will go below our surface velocity, and that's absolutely fine as long as we get our speed low enough from this frankly insane burn to come in safely. That would be wonderful. One thing I am noticing is we're having some issues pitching. Okay, I'm manually fixing that. There. That should be a bit more decent. We see a bit of an oscillation going on. We also see these fuel tanks beginning to have an overheat. Okay, so that indicates that we do have to be perpetually burning all the way through here. Noted. If these fuel tanks blow up too early, there are some theoretical possibilities that we can do. I would like for these fuel tanks to survive all the way down in theory. I'm not 100% certain that that's necessary, but I'd like to be able to use these fuel tanks to take off. That would be good. We're pitching again. Okay. I'm working on fixing that. Actually, I don't think we're pitching. I think we're just having our retrograde move on us. I think that's what's happening there. Because we're getting rid of our horizontal speed. So that's noted. Now, if this fuel tank goes, our engines go with it, and there's no point in keeping the rest of this around. However, this has slowed us down tremendously at this point. We still have a lot of DV in it, and I would like to keep that DV around. But this is looking solid so far. We haven't had any heat shield burn off as of yet. Although we are starting to see some heat gauges creep up over there, and we are going to end up losing these engines eventually. Also, we are definitely having a pitch oscillation here. Let's try to bring that back down. Ooh, are we losing attitude here? We might be losing attitude. This would be a very bad time for those engines to go, because we're using them to help maintain our attitude here. But let's see what happens here. Yeah, we're going to lose the engines pretty quickly. So we're going to be losing a fair amount of fuel here in this current iteration. That's noted. I'm going to move this down to here as soon as the game gets caught up. Yeah, we're losing those engines right now. Okay. Losing those engines is, of course, problematic, and this got rid of moving the... Okay. Let's move this down to here. It does not want to move. Okay. Cool. Let's do it this way. Because we're going to need to ditch these. And let's see what that ends up doing. Okay. So it's unfortunate to throw away that DV. No doubt about it. But let's get rid of this mass. In theory, it should be fine. But that is a lot of mass. Okay, we are pitching. So without the ability to control our pitch from those vectors, we lose attitude at this point. This is about the same altitude we lost attitude at before, but we are going substantially slower. So that's intriguing. We didn't immediately blow up during the pitch here, but we are going to be having some issues. So that only brought us down another 100 meters per second. Well, we're making definite progress here, but we're at this point having catastrophic failure due to pitch control. So we're going to have to revert this back. That's okay. We're getting so very close here. So very, 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 very close. So, I think it's very clear at this point it has nothing to do with mass distribution. It was at the same altitude every single time. Speed had nothing to do with it. That was just coincidental because we were using drag. So, to that end, it's happening at the same altitude, which means the same atmospheric pressure, right? So that, I think, is very indicative of aerodynamic lift from the wings. I think that's what's happening here. Okay, I managed to pause the game at long last. Okay, there we go. That's, you know, not great. We haven't had technical catastrophic failure yet, but it is currently happening. So we should revert this back, but that's incredibly, incredibly encouraging there. So let's revert this back to the VAB. And the main issue at this point is one particular thing. And that is that we lost the tank that these engines are attached to, right? So that is the core issue right now. So here's a question. If we were to load in here, and this is kind of an insane question, but if we were to load in here, and we were to come around over here and detach these engines, right? I want to be able to see these engines. So we're going to detach these. I'm going to duplicate this heat shield. And that's a little on the big side, but actually I kind of want that. I want it to protect everything back here. So we put that there. Then we put these engines, if the game catches up, We put these engines in 4x symmetry out over here. It wants to attach it like this. But it won't allow me to radially attach them onto the heat shield itself. Okay. So, with the heat shield there, that will protect all of this. What else can we do here? Well, I have a dumb idea. Are you ready for it? Here's the dumb idea. We're going to take some struts here. And we're going to have it be like these extra small ones. And I'm going to do this. Like so. Then I'm going to duplicate them. We're going to put them on like this. Which I'm not sure if that actually went on up over here. I don't think it did. But that's okay. And then we put on a small heat shield here. I know this is mildly insane, but we put on a small heat shield here. Maybe a little larger than the extra small. So yeah, an actual small heat shield. Like that. Maybe even larger than that. A medium heat shield. Yes, that will do. You do not need fairings. Get out of here. And then we attach the engines like that. So the idea here is that this heat shield protects these structures, this heat shield protects the fuel tanks, and the engines, we know, should be relatively okay. Now they're going to need a fuel line, and I don't know if the fuel line will overheat, but let's take a quick look at this, and we can see, actually, is fuel flowing here? It looks like it is. That's kind of insane. Okay. I want to run a quick test here to see if fuel is actually flowing here. But before we do that, I'm going to duplicate this because we need to head over to this side out over here. There we go. We need to grab this guy and we need to mount him right like that. There we go. Nice and straight. Like so. We should probably run some struts as well from, like, the engine over to... Or the heat shield, even. From the heat shield over to the fuel tank. It doesn't want to connect like that. Okay. So, instead, I would like to grab... Not you. Okay. I would like to grab this guy. And run it from here over to the tank. Just to make sure that's nice and steady. Okay, now the same thing over on the other side. Let's head over here, and we're going to run a strut from here to the tank. Okay, so in theory, something kind of like this. It's the same amount of thrust, but with significantly more heat shield protection, and also, in theory, some extra drag, which should be useful. Okay, now I want to make sure that this is actually going to burn. It looks like it is, based on this 14602. But I want to make absolutely certain of that. So we're just going to grab this, put it out on the pad really quick. I'm not going to run a full test here. I believe that the next one will be a success. We were able to hold attitude until we lost those engines. So that should be okay. And we can add in additional engines here if we wanted to. And in fact, that's probably not a terrible idea to add in one additional engine on this side of this heat shield if that works. So we could do that. We could even make that be like a Mammoth 2, but I think I'm going to make it be a Vector. So for now, let's put this in orbit around Eve. And we're just going to run a couple of stages here just to make sure we have fuel flow. Okay. So I'm going to throttle down. We're going to wait for it to get caught up. There we go. We're going to stage. And let's see. Yeah, this is kind of awkward staging, but we definitely have fuel flow there. We also see there's some moving around going on. Okay, let's revert this back to the VAB. That's fine. We can strut that, and we can get this all set up correctly. But we now know that there's definitely fuel flow there. So that looks good. We are almost done with this stage. This will work, assuming we can not lose those engines. I'm 99.9% confident of that. If we can just hold that attitude for a couple more seconds, I don't think we would have... We may have still flipped, but I don't think we would have burned up. We just got to hold that attitude for a little longer. So, I'm going to put in some struts out over here if the game will let me. There we go. I'm also going to duplicate this engine. I'm going to put it here. And we're going to not have this fairing be enabled. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm not sure where that engine actually went here. It goes here. Noted. So all of these are going to be merged together like so. Eventually, the game will get caught up here. There we go. Cool. And then these guys will go up here. There we go. And it'll go something kind of like that, in theory. Now, I do want to make sure these are strutted. In KSP1, at least, struts are physics-less parts, so this should not burn up, in theory. And this is in mirror symmetry. Can we have this be in 4x symmetry, please? Thank you. Okay, let's get rid of this and redo this, because this... Really? There we go. Okay, let's redo this in 4x symmetry. I want to make sure that these engines are directly strutted to the fuel tank. About like that. I have no idea what these struts... Why are we looking here now? Okay, KSP2. What are these struts? Okay, whatever. As long as it's connected and stable, that's what matters. It doesn't have to look pretty. Okay, let's get over to the other side. Eventually, KSP will get caught up. There we go. And let's head on over here, because we got to make sure that these are strutted as well. It looks like they are not exactly. Looks like there might be some broken struts here. Wait, what is happening here? What are these struts? We might have to single strut these. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of really wacky struts going on over here right now. I think we'll have to do these one at a time. That is unfortunate. KSP2 is weird. There's not really much else to say about that. It has weird issues. Okay, so let's do this down in single mode. And apparently we're looking up here now. Sure. This is fine. We'll just go like this. 1, 2, and down here, we'll do 3. I don't think that actually connected. Okay. Let's make sure that this is out over here. There we go. And 4. So we'll connect this here and here. In theory, that should be nice and sturdy now. Okay. So now I want to head back over this way and check in on what mess this made of the struts over here. Really quick. Yeah, there's definitely a mess made of the struts. So I'm going to get rid of these for the moment. And we're going to go down to 1x symmetry. And we're going to do 1. As soon as the game is caught up here. There we go. 2. 3. There we go. And 4. So this will give us a little bit more thrust. And we can also expand this to be additional fuel down here if we really wanted to. That would be a theoretical possibility. So that's definitely interesting, but this will be more thrust than what we had before, as well as more drag, and more attitude control. So in theory, this should be absolutely fine. But for now, it is time to put a cut in here. It's well past time, in fact. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, this is going to work. I'm 100% certain that this is going to work. Actually, I've felt that before. I am 40% certain that this is going to work. I'll run some tests off camera, but I really hope this works. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.